The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 152 with Frank Duffy from Par 4 Performance.
Like, movement is medicine. There's nothing else that will help improve the way you feel unless you're moving.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. Welcome back this week, where we have our special guest, Frank Duffy from Par 4 Performance, joining us this week. As you know, we try to bring you some of the best and brightest in the world of golf, fitness, nutrition, everything. And Frank is a young guy, but he is definitely making some waves in the world of performance in general, but especially in the world of golf and performance and the idea of controlling your body better, being able to move your body better in conjunction with strength training. So I had a chance to catch up with Frank this past week and talk about some of the things that they're doing at Par 4 in order to help improve golfers' games, help them move better, play better. And as Frank says, his goal and their goal at Par 4 is not to make a scratch golfer out of you, but their goal is to keep you on the course longer, to keep you from having pain and keep you from having to call a chiropractor the day after you go and play golf. So just a little background on Frank. He's the head coordinator of strength camps at the Cressy Sports Performance facility up in Hudson, Massachusetts, where they deal with not only a lot of athletes and baseball players, but they also, Frank works a lot with the general population and does a lot of their nutrition consulting. And so his motto is that by enhancing a golfer's mobility and improving the way that they control their body, they're able to use that and carry that over into their swing for better performance, but also just longevity on the golf course. And that's what we talk about a lot today, is just what do you need to be doing on a daily basis, weekly basis, in order to kind of tap into those reserves that you may not know that you have, but that you definitely have in regards to how your body moves, how your body feels. And we go into what he does with clients, what they do at Par 4 Performance, but also what Frank has experienced going through some of the training himself and the improvements in strength and movement, as well as how it's improved his prowess on the links. And then we're going to talk about kind of a unique course that these guys are doing at Par 4, where they're doing an online course, and we'll kind of highlight that on how it's been helping their golfers improve their mobility and really just improve their ability to get in positions and teach their body how to handle different stresses, and how you can get involved with that course at the end of this episode. But before we jump into the episode with Frank, let's take a quick second to thank our sponsors for today's show, which is Scratch TV. Scratch is basically an online media platform that kind of highlights all the fun stuff going on in the world of golf on the tours, the PGA Tour, and is kind of put together in conjunction with the PGA Tour. So these guys have behind-the-scenes access to give us the most up-to-date information on what's going on social media-wise. They always put together some different videos, both very entertaining as well as very informational on what's going on in the world of golf. So if you haven't checked out Scratch TV, go to scratchtv.com and check out all their profiles on social media. I guarantee you'll get some laughs out of the content there. All right, speaking of laughs, Frank and I had a good time on this interview, so let's not wait any longer. Here's Frank Duffy from Par 4 Performance. Frank Duffy Fitness, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. So we've been seeing a lot of great content from you and your partner Joe and Kirk, and putting out a lot of different videos and just blog articles and things about what you guys are doing at Par 4 Performance, and how you're helping golfers not just get stronger but move better, but also just for basic longevity of their fitness level, what they're doing on a daily basis, and how they can improve that stuff, and that automatically improves their golf game. So just give us a little background on you first, and then maybe where Par 4 Performance came from, and we'll kind of go from there.
So I appreciate the kind words. So I'm Frank. I'm a strength and conditioning coach at Cressy Sports Performance in Hudson, Massachusetts. And we work primarily with baseball players. I would say that's about 80% of the clientele we see. I'm primarily responsible for more of our general population that walks through the door. So I'm the coordinator of our strength camp program, which is our large group training. So I see a decent amount of people through that group that are recreational golfers that are like, oh, I'm getting old, or oh, I'm in pain the day after like playing 18 on Sunday. It's like there's something that's missing from the protocol in regards to like being able to do this on a consistent basis without getting hurt. So that's kind of the goal that we're going for with Par 4 Performance. Like, hey, I'm not going to make you a scratch golfer. I have no intention on like getting you to shoot 68, but like I want to get you out on the course on a Sunday and have you feeling good on Monday so you can get back out there next weekend without having to see a chiropractor, without having to pop pills, without having to use a heating pad. So I want to teach you to move the right way so that you can limit any type of injuries or discomfort or anything along those lines to keep you on the course. So that's the route we're taking with this.
Cool. And so how long has Par 4 been around, and kind of just explain the dynamic there?
So we came up with the concept, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. We didn't go live with it until last year, but like we were out on the course and like we're god awful. We're not any good whatsoever. But like we enjoy being out there, and I still swing like a baseball bat. So Adam Koloff, who's a swing instructor, really good one, he's been helping me out a little bit. So it's come a long way since. But we're like, hey, we should try to do something with this. And like I think we were on a Par 4, and it was like Par 4 performance. I was like, all right, sign us up.
Nice.
So,
I love it.
So we started coming up with the concepts at that time because when I was back in New York, we were working at the same gym together. So we were going through the functional range conditioning course at that time. We went through kin stretch together. And then it was like, all right, how are we going to apply this to what we want to do going forward? So it was like...
And when you say we, you're talking about Joe, right?
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, sorry about that. Joe Gambino, who's out of New York. And so we sat down and were like, all right, let's take all these concepts and try to start implementing it with a golf population. So the main thing is just trying to create good content, just to start to build a name for ourselves, get an audience going. And then from there, we have our virtual kin stretch group, which we'll talk about later, but that's another way to incorporate more of the mobility side of things for injury prevention.
Very cool. So I noticed that you guys have so much focus on, obviously Joe's got kind of the rehab side. You've got a lot of the strength training background, and Joe does too. But you guys put so much emphasis on the ability to control our bodies and be able to do what we want to do. Or I think you even put up a post recently talking about how we actually can do more than we realize we can. I think we have more reserves in our range of motion than we think we do. We just don't know how to tap into it.
Yeah.
Why is the body control piece such a big component to what you guys are doing?
When we think of swinging a golf club, like that, our DNA we're not designed to swing a golf club. It's one of the most unnatural things. Throwing a baseball is a very unnatural thing for the human body to do. So what we're trying to do is, all right, if we're going to do something that's unnatural, we're not meant to do, rotate in one direction over and over and over, we're going to try to minimize the compensations we're going to create as much as possible. So whether it's doing stuff in the opposite direction or just learning how to control the spine segment by segment to prevent any type of disc herniations or pulling any muscles of the back or oblique strains while rotating, while swinging a golf club, those are the things we're trying to prevent in the gym because that's our controlled environment. So if I'm seeing someone for 2 or 3 hours a week, I got to make the most of that opportunity to ensure that when they're out on the course or out picking up groceries or something along those lines, that they're not pulling something just because they don't have the prerequisite capabilities to do that without hurting themselves. So it's figuring out the deficiencies of that human being and then trying to improve it from there. That's what we strive to do.
What are some of the major culprits that you see? You mentioned the deficiencies. I find that in work with my own clients and different populations, there's a lot of repetitive things that we see over and over and over again that a lot of these golfers have, and for certain reasons. What are the big things you find, and why do you think it is that we find those specific limitations?
I mean, we see a decent amount of lower backs. I'll also see lead hip because of the internal rotation of that when you come through the downswing. I think the main reason why is just because it's the same repetitive movement in one direction. Like we're not like, if I'm swinging, I'm a lefty, I'm not swinging a golf club righty when I'm out there. So if I do that 100 times, that's being generous. But if I do that 100 times in 18, then I'm going to have to do something to counterbalance that. So I need to do something to get me rotating the opposite direction because I'm going to do that in my everyday life. Like 24/7, there's going to be something that I have to do to rotate to the right side. If I haven't prepared myself to do that, then I'm going to probably do something detrimental to my body. So it's like, all right, we're going to try to take this unilateral movement that we do over and over and over and over again and try to minimize the risk of it hurting us in the long run. Because I could probably do 18 right now without an issue. But if I don't address that and do that 3 or 4 times a week, eventually something's going to come out of it. I'm going to hurt myself.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny, we hear so often that golfers complain of back pain or shoulder pain or hip pain or whatever. And they're like, man, I just don't understand why I get this pain afterwards. And I was just thinking the other day, I'm like, none of us would go out and just take batting practice and take 100 swings on a Saturday afternoon and think that I'm not going to have any repercussions after this. You would think, no, I got to get prepared for this, or I'm going to be really sore, or go out and throw 100 pitches in a day. Like, I would expect to be sore if I didn't prepare for that. So I think that, kind of shifting that model of, oh, golf's just a club where you go hit this little white ball around, but no, you're doing things that your body doesn't really like to do, like you mentioned.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So the people we see are usually the 9-to-5ers, like the people that sit at a desk for 40 hours a week, and they go and do this, and then they're going to be the same people that are like, oh, I'm just getting old. Like, no, you're not getting old. You're just not moving. Like, right. That's the main issue here. Like, we got to get you moving more.
Yeah. You can't just settle for the fact that, well, I'm 40 or I'm 50, and that's just how things go. It's like, no, you're just not doing anything.
100%.
Exactly. All right, so I know that you guys, obviously with your background, you've got the strength training component, you've got the rehab side, you do a lot of the movement-based stuff. Kind of give us an idea of what a breakdown of maybe one of your sessions would look like with somebody. If they're coming in maybe 2 times a week or whatever, what does that kind of look like, and how do you, personally, I always like to figure out how some of the other great coaches are doing this. How do you work in the strength stuff? How do you work in the mobility stuff? Where does it all fall together?
So to break it down, like it's going to depend, like what exercises, obviously, but like if we're going through an hour session or a 45-minute session, whatever we have with the person, it'll be 10, 15-minute warm-up. Just make sure that we're getting their joint moving through their full ranges of motion under some type of voluntary contraction. From there, we'll do some type of power work, whether it's medicine ball scoop tosses or anything just to recreate that hip hinge position, but also some rotational component. But then we'll also do that on both sides just to make sure that we're creating power in both directions. We also might do some type of assistance work based off any limitations there. So I might superset a scoop toss with like some type of shoulder exercise, like external rotation, just to improve that position to get to the top of the backswing. And then we'll go into our strength work after that. So that might be a trap bar deadlift, that might be a kettlebell swing, a kettlebell deadlift based off their capabilities, just to get them into that hinge position. And I love using Dan John's concept of push, pull, hinge, squat, carry. I think that's the best way to attack it. And then typically between 6 to 8 exercises, I'll prescribe 3 to 4 sets. And then depending on the exercise, the rep scheme goes from there. And then if with really like severe like limitations in regards to mobility, then we'll start to incorporate some of the FRC concepts as like a cool down. So like progressive, regressive, angular isometric loading, which is pretty taxing on the nervous system, but it's a great way to help expand and learn how to control ranges of motion because you're doing everything voluntarily. So it will take a lot out of you if you do it before you actually start strength training. So we try to save that towards the end. And that's typically how we would structure that.
Cool. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the FRC stuff. We had Dr. Andrea Ospina on a while back. We had Pam Owens on, who obviously is a big proponent of FRC and have talked so much about learning how to create that control and how to do it. So give us some ideas on how do we tap into those reserves? Maybe we'll dive a little bit more into some of these FRC concepts, not totally going full blown FRC, but just basic, simplified. What are you doing with those different motions and how do people get better at that?
In regards to like a positioning or like how does it apply to a golf swing?
Let's say more like that somebody's got some limitation in their hips or whatever, and what's kind of the concept of the technique that you're using, and why does that work? Why are we able to tap into those reserves like you said?
So if I see someone with say limited hip flexion, for example, the first thing I'm going to do is they're going to be doing their cars every day, so their joint circles, just to make sure they're getting to their full range of motion. We say that's an assessment tool, but in reality, if someone's that limited and we just take them into a position that they physically don't get into every single day and teach them how to actively control that, they will see improvements. So it's a matter of making sure that whatever I give a person, that they're on top of that 2 or 3 times a day. I'll tell them, hey, every time you eat, you're going to do this right afterwards or right before. So it's just giving them 2 or 3, I would say big rock mobility drills. It's like, you're going to do these every single day. So I'm working, this is completely off topic, but I'm working with a lady right now who has multiple sclerosis, and we've been using the FRC principles. I've been with her for like 2.5 weeks now. And it was like, hey, you're going to do ankle cars, hip cars, and then I gave her a supine pales rails contraction to do. It's like, you're going to do these 2 or 3 times a day, every single day. When she first came in, she was walking like stiff-legged with a walker. Now she's getting some bend in her knees, and it's in a matter of 2 weeks. We haven't done much. I gave her 3 things to do every single day, and the fact that she's just learned how to better control those joints individually, they've all worked into the system better, and it's helping her improve her quality of life already. So we've barely scratched the surface on this stuff.
That's amazing. I think there's something to be said about, keeping it as simple as possible first for compliance sake, for all of us. I mean, I struggle with it too, but having just a couple things like, I know I got to do this every single day or a couple times a week or whatever. Give us a little breakdown of what you mean by pales and rails again. I know we've talked about it on other shows, but I'm sure there's people that don't really understand that terminology. Hey, let's take a quick second here to thank another one of our featured sponsors of today's episode, which is radroller.com. Radroller makes some of the greatest soft tissue and myofascial products out on the market, and they are kind of taking the world by storm as far as the people that are using them. They've got professional baseball teams, hockey teams, and a lot of professional golfers working with some different individuals in the golf and fitness space to really kind of ramp up how we're using these tools and what we're doing in order to mobilize different tissues in our body so we can get that motion, we can get that range of motion and movement in the different parts of our body, our joints, our hips, our shoulders, our backs, in order to swing the club better. And like Frank says, not have to go see a chiropractor, massage therapist, or physical therapist the next day just to kind of get things back in order. So if you want to get your hands on some of the greatest tools known to man for loosening up some of those tight knots, those tight tissues, and helping you move better on the golf course, go to radroller.com. And there's even a small little rumor that there might be a rad course coming to the home of 18 Strong here in St. Louis, Missouri. So we will keep you posted on any information that comes out with that. All right, let's get back to Frank.
Yeah, so pales rails are fancy ways of saying isometrics, okay? So if we're doing isometric contraction, so let's say I was doing my ankle. So I'm going to learn how to contract my ankle in both directions, essentially. I'm going to try to pull myself into a further range of motion, but I'm not using a band or any type of soft tissue mobilization instrument to try to get me into a position, because those could help, but they're more than likely a transient effect. What I want to do is I want to learn how to do it on my own. So I'm going to try to contract my ankle joint in as many different directions as I possibly can, just to try to improve that joint. And then over time, I'm going to start to load that further and further and further. So without showing you an actual demonstration of an exercise, a little hard to understand, but like I want to actively pull myself deeper into positions and learn how to control that position to ensure that I'm making sure that I'm building resilience at that joint so that I don't get hurt over time. So again, I have a lot of stuff on the Instagram that shows examples of the pales rails contractions, but essentially it just comes down to learning how to develop force in a position you're not used to developing force in.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll definitely link up to your Instagram account, and I know you guys have a lot of stuff on YouTube as well that people can go. So we'll link to all that stuff in the show notes for everybody to go see. Yeah, for sure. Because it's hard to describe just over the air here and not being able to see it. But basically, it's the idea of, you're basically pushing yourself as hard as you can in whatever direction you're limited in.
Well, that's another thing too. It doesn't, like, what I'll tell people is, like, when I teach a class, like a kinstretch class, we go 100% intensity. But if I'll tell people, like, an analogy of, hey, this is the equivalent of you doing a trap bar deadlift to your 1 rep max every single day. It's like, this doesn't have to be 100% every single time. Because when I get people to understand, like, hey, I could do this 50% as hard as I can, 75% as hard as I can, and still see results, then it's like, oh, I don't have to crush my joint every single day to get me into a position. Because when we do the class, it is hard. Get into that maximal contraction and holding that is not easy to do. But when they understand how to gauge it and take the intensity down a little bit, that's when they start to be like, oh, I could do this every single day. Because those 100% contractions suck. I hate doing those things.
They're brutal. I had a guy in yesterday, and he looked at me after doing some hips, and he's like, "This." And I've worked with this guy for years. He goes, "This is by far the hardest thing." And he's like, "It's not that it." He goes, "It hurts, but it just sucks. Like, it just." But I know I'm getting better every time I do it. I get a little bit better, and I think going back to the contraction thing, somebody gave me the analogy or said that a good way to train kind of that contractions is almost just use the handshake, and and think of it like 100% is you squeezing as hard as you can, and then you can kind of gauge it from there. You do 75% squeeze. Same thing's going for, whatever part of your body you're working on. Let's talk about the class a little bit, because you guys are doing kind of a unique thing, and we talked with Pam a little bit about the kin stretch class. Yeah. But you guys you have an online version of it. And I'm going to encourage everybody here to go check out these guys' online version. I think you offer a free class, right?
We offer a complimentary class, which breaks down the primary thing there is we break down all the cars to the body. So we go joint by joint, breaking down every single range of motion that each joint goes through, and learn how to control that in a class setting. And then we break down a 90-90 as well, just the basic PALS rails to that, getting people to understand what a PALS and rails contraction is. So those are the two main things we cover in our complimentary class that we send out to everyone in our newsletter.
Cool. And what has been the feedback? Well, give us a little more idea of so what the kin stretch class looks like, and what you're doing in there. Obviously, you said the cars and the hip 90-90, but when you go beyond that free complimentary class, what else are you working on, and how is this different from maybe a yoga class or a Pilates class or something like that?
So when after going past that complimentary class, for people that stick on, we want their feedback. It's like, hey, what do you guys want to work on? Like we can run ourselves into the ground with hips and shoulders, but if someone has a bum, elbow, wrist, ankle, if we're not addressing that, then what's the point at the end of the day? So the big thing is getting feedback from everyone that's in the group to be like, hey, what can we help you improve on? Then we try to implement that into a class setting, and then we record it and get it up to them. And then alongside that class, we also provide a movement of the week. It's like, hey, this is the movement you're going to focus on every single day of this week, and you're going to try to get it 2 or 3 times, like I mentioned about earlier, daily. The difference between what we do with a kin stretch versus like a yoga, where yoga is going to get you more into like a position passively and try to hold that position. What we're doing with kin stretch is we're actively trying to get ourselves from position to position. It's learning body control and learning how to contract, not as hard as I can, but get myself to contract enough throughout my body to get me from point A to point B in a safe, controlled manner. So that's the main thing we're going for. So we're not doing crazy Cossack squats into pistols, into deep squats and holding that, but we're trying to get the basic concepts down. So if we wanted to pursue that, like one of my goals is to do a full Cossack squat by the end of the year. It's not looking too promising, but like if I want to get there, I'm given the whole blueprint for me to get from where I'm at right now to where I'm at down the road. So like it's layering the exercises to make sure that we're seeing results in regards to our mobility work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your personal experience, because I know I watch your Instagram. I see you lifting all those heavy weights,
Thanks,
but you've made comments about how much better certain things feel, and just how things have changed. And I've heard this from so many people that not necessarily working on the specific weighted movements, but it was the change in the way that they were working on the way their body moved and how they controlled it that then escalated how their weights went up or whatever movements they were doing. So what's been your experience?
So I'm not a power lifter, but like I train to bench, squat, deadlift. Squatting has always been an issue for me. Like I've had anterior hip pain with squatting forever. It was like you put me on the table, you take me through stuff passively. It's like, oh, you get past 90 degrees of hip flexion, you get a little bit of internal rotation. It's like you should be able to squat, but that was the whole passive side, flexibility side. Actively, I had nothing. I couldn't get my hip past 90 degrees. My ankles weren't great. Zero hip internal rotation whatsoever. So what did I do before I took FRC? I was like, oh, I'm just going to invest in a pair of squat shoes. So that lasted about 2 or 3 weeks before I was like, oh, the hip pain's back. And at that time, I had a front squat of like 275 for 3. Felt like garbage. But like, it was like, hey, I can't do this any further. And then it came to a point where I hurt my back. It was like, all right, I need to figure something out. And it was like a blessing in disguise, because it was pretty much right after I took FRC. And when I first took that course, I was like, I have no idea what any of this means. So I'm gonna have to sit down and try to figure this out. I was like, hey, it was a perfect time, because it was like, all right, I have an injury, which they talked about in the course. If you're injured, it means that the force on your body was too much for you to absorb. So I was like, all right, how do I figure out what joints need to work better so I could get under a squat again? So like this has taken a long time. This was about a year ago. Fast forward to now, like squatting is the best it's ever felt. Definitely not as strong as I was in regards to it, but like the fact that there's zero discomfort or pain there anymore is like a game changer for me. And it was just a matter of like, hey, your hip flexion sucks, your internal rotation sucks, your ankle sucks. Go fix those things and then get back under the bar. So it's been a long process, but it was a real eye opener for me.
And so those were kind of the big things you worked on, were the hip flexion, the internal rotation, the ankle. And you mentioned that it took a long time. I think that's a component that we forget about a lot. Like we go and we're like, oh, I need to work on this, and we'll do it for a week or two, and then it's not getting better, and then you kind of fizzle out. But how long would you say you started working on this stuff pretty diligently that it took to get to where you are now?
I took FRC April 2016. I took Kinchurch a month later. So like in that period, it was like, this is like overload. I didn't know what was going on. So I would say there was like a 3-month lull where I was just playing with stuff, didn't really know what I was doing. But then I started to understand the system. And Joe was a huge help to this because they were applying it to their practice in physical therapy. And he started to break it down for me like, hey, this is the road you should be taking with this. It was like, you could do your cars all you want, but you're not going to expand your ranges of motion that way. So I was like, all right. I basically rigged up exercise that would help expand that and then learn how to control it. And I would say about 9 months it took to really like see some remarkable improvements with it. But like I didn't have much mobility at all. Like I played baseball my whole life. I always rotated in one direction. Started getting into golf, still rotating that one way. So I always had some type of left hip stuff going on, right knee, lower back. But now it's pretty much all alleviated to this point. So, but it wasn't like a overnight process. It takes a long time to really make any type of physiological adaptations. So
yeah, I think that's so important for all of us to notice, because I'm the same way where I'll kind of fizzle on something. You know, you don't see results, you get kind of frustrated, and all of a sudden you start to backtrack, or you're like, well, I guess it's just not going to work for me. But,
I went through that too, man. It was like, I'm not. Like, it felt good for a couple of days. It was like, I'm not seeing anything. So like, it's like, hey, you're going to be discouraged. You just got to keep working with it.
Yep. Great point. What has been with the class and everything? What was the initial feedback from your golfers when they first maybe hit that first Kinstretch class, or you first did the FRC stuff with them, or started working on this body control? Did they hate it? Did they love it? What was it like?
I would say it was like a love-hate. They're like, this is so hard. So Adam actually, Koloff brought this up to me. He's like, he was doing 90-90 hip switches from side to side. He was like, when I learned how to do this the right way, it's absolutely miserable. Like, yeah, you see this exercise all over the internet and people are just flopping back and forth without really any intent to it. Like when you start to really internally like digest the exercise and do them the right way, it becomes so hard. So that's the main feedback we got. Like, hey, this is hard, but I feel really good afterwards. So it's like I want to do more stuff like this. So that the fact that they understand that like this isn't an easy process, but they're willing to continue with it. That intrinsic motivation is huge for us, because like, hey, they're enjoying this. Like let's keep them going. Let's make sure that they get better at this within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So,
have you found that this is kind of like a missing link that you guys have found for your training that has really kind of helped propel guys and girls forward?
For my in-persons, definitely, because like we don't do much outside the cars, but it's like, hey, we superset our deadlifts with some type of overhead one, our upper body exercise with the lower body cars. Like just doing that alone and allowing people to really understand their body has been huge for just teaching them tension throughout every other exercise we do. Like we only do 1 or 2 FRC exercises per class. Like those 2 alone have helped big time with everything else that surrounds those 2 exercises. So.
Cool. Yeah, and I don't mean to make this a huge FRC episode or anything, but I think it's more speaking to the fact that, you know, learning to create that tension in your body, learn to work on your range of motion on a more diligent basis. And it doesn't have to be crazy hard stuff every day. You know, just moving something, shoulders, hips, figuring out what you're lacking, because we all kind of know what our problems are to some extent, or even just start working on those big things, you know, the shoulders, the hips, the ankles, the back. I think that if we could get everybody just moving a little bit every single day, we'd all be
huge, man.
We'd all be way better off.
Like Kevin Carr hits on the head with the whole movement as medicine thing. Like movement is medicine. There's nothing else that will help improve the way you feel unless you're moving. Yeah,
that's for sure. All right, man. I got a couple last minute questions for you here.
Let them rip.
That I know you're ready for. First and foremost, Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
I'm going to have to go Happy Gilmore, man. I'm too young for both of them, but I vaguely remember that one.
Now,
I love all.
Rumor
Adam
has
Sandler.
rumor has it you've never seen Caddyshack. Is that right?
I haven't. I'm not a big movie guy. But I saw Happy Gilmore when I was like 10 or 11. I don't remember it at all. That was about 13 years ago now. But I remember most of Adam Sandler's stuff, and he's one of the funnier human beings I've ever come across. So,
all right. Well, your home program from the 18 Strong podcast is you have to rewatch that movie, and you got to watch Caddyshack.
I just got it. We'll find them.
All right. If golf was like baseball, which I know you're very familiar with, and you had to pick a walk-up song to the tee box, what's your walk-up song?
I'm going with my college one. So "Kick It in the Sticks" by Brantley Gilbert. I love Brantley Gilbert. I'm a big country guy. So that's my go-to on that.
Sweet. Love it. All right.
I would milk that out so hard. Like, you tap the cleats, you tie them again. It takes about a minute to get to the batter's box.
Nice. I want to hear that. I want to hear that one line.
Yeah, that one part of it. Exactly.
All right. If you could play 18 holes of golf with anybody in the world, past, present, future, who would it be and where would you play?
I'm going with John Daly. That'd be one hell of a time, I think, man.
I think you're right.
Where I play, I would say St. Andrews. Like, watching the Open a couple years ago, and like, that was unbelievable. Like, being able, like, when they pan out and you see them on the water like that, it's like, wow, that's one place I want to get to before I die.
Yeah, so. And the history of that place, I'm with you, man. I think that's a place that has to be on most golfers' bucket lists.
Yeah, sure.
All right, buddy. What last piece of advice do you have for all of us, and what has you most excited moving forward with Par 4 Performance?
Last piece of advice: regardless of what your goal is from a golf or a fitness standpoint, like, your best option is to find some type of coach that understands what you're going for. So I have a coach, Tony Bonvecchio. He writes all my programming. Like, I've gotten much stronger from it. It's not because I can't write a program. It's the fact that I have some type of accountability now. Because I know for myself, when I write my own program, that thing's done in a week. Like, I need someone to keep me on my toes and like give me, like, take all the guesswork out and hold me accountable to a higher standard to make sure I'm seeing progress. So if I would highly suggest seeking somebody out that understands what your goals are and knows how to get you there. From the Par 4 Performance, like, the thing I'm most excited about is not only the Kinstretcher group has grown pretty nicely over the last 2 months, but we're also going to start incorporating our online coaching segment to it, which is going to be programming, technique work, and making sure that everything we do from a programming standpoint, like, we understand that the quality is the most important thing, which I think Joe will be able to provide, like, big time with, in regards to, like, hey, with my background in physical therapy, like, if this injury is occurring, like, we should dive deeper into A, B, and C exercises. So, like, it's going to be a collaboration on that end. So I'll be taking the performance side. He'll be taking more of the preventative approach to it. And we're going to try to combine the two to really try to bring a service to people that isn't really out there right now from the online standpoint.
I love it, man. Well, I think you guys are doing phenomenal work and constantly putting out good content. That's the reason why I wanted to get in touch with you and give you guys a little shout out on the air and tell people to go check out your stuff. Definitely go check out the Kinstretch class. If you don't know about Kinstretch or what it is, definitely give it a shot. I'm going to take your class one of these days. And
appreciate it, man. I want to say thank you to Allie too, who set this up. So she's awesome.
Allie's a rock star. She's one of our favorites here at the 18 Strong podcast. Yeah. Everybody knows that. So keep doing what you're doing, man. Where can everybody go to find out more about you guys, and what's the website? And then I'll obviously link up the Instagrams and all that stuff.
Yeah. So the website is www.par4performance.com. 4, not a number, FOUR. And everything's based off of there. We have both of our personal accounts through Instagram and Facebook there. We also have the Par 4 social media stuff linked to that. But you can find everything about us from that website.
Awesome. All right, buddy. We'll be with you. We'll talk to you in the very near future.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, man.
You got it. Thanks for joining us this week. If you want any more information on Frank Duffy, just go to 18strong.com/Frank Duffy or look up episode number 152 at 18strong.com, and we'll have links to everything. You can find Par 4 Performance, you can find Cressy Sports Performance, and you'll even be able to go to check out that Kinstretch class that we talked about, which I know has been benefiting golfers across the nation, and as well as athletes across the nation, just on working on, tapping into those reserves, those tanks of extra motion that we don't think we have, but we definitely do when you just challenge your body in the right ways and you start kind of exploring these different things. So I know the guys are doing great things with that class. So highly encourage you to go check that out. Big thanks to our sponsors for this week's episode, Scratch TV and radroller.com. Of course, we really appreciate their support, and the show doesn't go on without them. So go check them out. And then, of course, thank you again, and come join us in our Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement. We'd love to connect. We'd love to talk to you and kind of find out how we can help you more on this journey of playing better golf, getting in better shape, and everything above. All right, thanks. We'll catch up with you next week. Train hard, practice smart, play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.